I want to start off by saying that this class is intentionally looser than most classes. This is not actually even a class, so to speak. This is, you've got a couple months under your belt. You've probably gone on 1 or 2 listing appointments at this point. And let's talk about how it went. Let's further, tweak the process. Let's help you gain some confidence in the presentation. So I want to start the class and end the class by saying, are there particular things that you're struggling with so far in a listing appointment that you'd like to talk about? And to give an example, Amy Shoup said to me one day, I feel like I just forget things like, oh, I meant to talk about that. And I'd like to have maybe a checklist at the listing appointment just to kind of help me remember. Make sure you talk about showing time. Make sure you talk about this or that or the other thing. An agenda, so to speak, which both of you did not think of, but when I said it, you both went, yeah, probably not a bad idea, right? Okay. So as I'm talking, I want this to be not just a presentation. I want just break in. If something speaks to you, something doesn't make sense to you, break in, but let's talk about it. First of all, the pre-listing interview. The pre-listing interview, we assume, is on the phone. And there's two things you're trying to do on the pre-listing interview. You're trying to get information about the house up front so that you can come prepared as possible, but you're also trying to figure things out about the seller. Motivation, how reasonable are they? How many agents are they? What are the landmines I don't want to step in at the listing appointment? So there are some questions we want to be sure we ask at the pre-listing interview that we get to the bottom of that, right? That we set up those landmines, or at least identify those landmines before we step in them. So first of all, there are a couple of pre-listing property information forms that we use. This first one was kind of the one everybody used before Momentum came around and was developed by Talia. You'll notice, yes, thank you. You'll notice that there's way more information on here than you might actually get from the seller.
Or need.
Or possibly need, or can't get from the tax records, etc. So this wasn't really meant to be an interview form. What I would do is, before I would speak to the person, or I got where I knew the form, I would make sure I highlighted what do I want to get from them, because some of this stuff you do want to get from the seller. But there are a lot of questions on here I did not ask the seller. There are 3 questions on here. 5 questions. 5 questions. 6. 5 questions. I always ask the seller. And now I don't have the original, so can I use yours? I did not expect such great attendance. No, and I do have to watch and make sure. I'm sorry, but let me open up participants. Sorry, nobody else. Okay. I always asked when they purchased it and how much, because there is a chance it's not in the MLS. There is a chance it was an off-market sale. There is a chance it was so old, so long ago that it's not there. So I always ask, when did they purchase it and for how much? I always ask, and I gotta see where it says it here. It's not here, so I must have just asked. Oh, recent sales. If you can see about 1/3 down of the way, kind of right above bedrooms, it says recent sales. That means, have there been any recent sales in your neighborhood that you're gauging your house against? Because that's a landmine I don't want to step in. I don't want to get there, show them all the comps that I think are relevant, and they say, well, what about Bob and Sue's house a block away that sold for, well, Bob and Sue's house sold 1.5 years ago, and I only pulled comps from a year, and I don't know about Bob and Sue's house. So that's a again, this is to prevent stepping in landmines when we get to the listing. I always ask, are there any recent sales in the area that you're gauging your house to, or that you've paid attention to, that you're kind of comparing your house to? Yes, Bob and Sue sold down the street and da 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 da. Thank you. Okay. The other two questions I always ask, it says weak points, strong points, but we know how we say this. If a buyer were looking at your home and other similar homes, what would they love about your home? Oh, da 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 da, the bird baths and blah 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 blah. Okay, now if buyers were looking at your home and other similar homes, what might make them hesitate about your home? You don't say what would they not love or what might make them hesitate. That is just the right wording that they will answer it, and they will answer it honestly. Well, we always thought that the windows need to be replaced, and frankly, if we didn't sell, that would be the next thing on our list. The windows are old. Great, you just write it down. That's the perfect way to ask that question, that they get what you're saying. They don't find it offensive. It's not hard to answer. They know the answer. They will give you that answer. Again, landmines that you don't have to step in when you get there. Oh shit, those windows are old. I've got to change all my comps because, okay, it just very much helps you. All right, so questions ask what to watch out for. Then along came momentum, which was a much, why am I keep doing that? Which was a much shorter questionnaire, which I added the, what would they love? What would make them hesitate? Because those to me are non-negotiables. What this really tells you is either use a sheet we already have or create your own, but have a sheet. There are some never will change, always are true truths in real estate. And one of the never will change, always are truths is you will be a better agent if you do things the same way all the time. Person calls, I'd like to list my home. Hold on, give me 1 second. Let me get some information out. You reach in your drawer, you pull out the same property information questionnaire every time. You say, great. That's terrific. Obviously you don't do it but you pull it out that very second, but you don't just go right into, let me ask you something, but you say, terrific. Tell me what's going on. Well, blah, 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 blah. And at some point you say, okay, this is what I typically do. I want to set up an appointment with you in 3 or 4 days to give me time to do my homework in the meantime. Once we've set up that appointment, I've got some questions to ask you about the property. I want to do my homework well, so there's some things I need to know about the property. Some of these things you may not know, and that's fine. I can find them on the tax records, but answer what you can. The reason I ask them many of the questions that can be found on the tax records is to make sure they know. Right? If they tell me 3,500 square feet and the tax records say 2,300 square feet, either the tax records might be wrong, they may have put on an addition that the assessor didn't notice, or they might be wrong. So I want to know when there are discrepancies if I can. But if I say, how many square feet do you have above grade? And they say, I'll say, just guess. I can get that from the tax records. I don't know, 1,500. Okay, great. But I'm going to try to get the information, because that's another landmine I don't want to step in. If there's a big discrepancy, that's going to be one of the first things we're going to talk about when I come. Hey, I wanted to mention something. You had said 3,500 square feet. I pulled up the tax records and it says 2,300. Let's figure out why there's a difference there. And either it's, oh, I thought you could count the basement, or it's, well, we put on a big addition and never got a permit. And permit problem. Yeah. Good for you that you're not being taxed on that, but we have a permit. But whatever, right? Whatever. We're looking for discrepancies. Okay. Have a form, know what questions to ask and how to ask them, and you're determining what to watch out for. Right? Okay. We all know about saying, is there a Mr.? Is there a Mr. Lacey Cobb that will be there? No, it's just me. Okay, great. Okay. Any hiccups or questions or problems you've had in the past at this point, at the pre-listing interview? No? Okay. Pre-listing packet. Are we sending out pre-listing packets? The reason I make it 3 or 4 days from now is also to give me time to send them a pre-listing packet. Is anyone doing that? Is anyone not doing that?
Like mailing them a packet?
Mailing them a packet or dropping it off if the time, or emailing it if the time is short.
I put together something based off of some information Talia had provided. I just haven't, for my listing appointments, they've just happened so quickly. I haven't had time to actually mail it out because I would already be there. So
can you talk them into waiting longer? That's the difference between a buyer and a seller. A buyer is an emergency. That house could be pending in 3 days. Seller's not. And the way I always explained that was, I want plenty of time to do the homework I need to do so that I'm fully prepared when I come for us to talk about everything that for me to give you the answers you need to make a good decision. So I would recommend you see if you can't. Now, back in the good old days, I could next week, I could say, I'm already booked the rest of this week. What's your next week look like? And they'd tell me, and we'd set up an appointment for next week and give me plenty of time. Okay. All right. So some of the things that I would recommend you have in a pre-listing packet. And again, a pre-listing packet is to make your life easier. Problems arise when there are unmet expectations. The sooner and earlier we set up realistic expectations, the happier everybody is. So it looks like I'm giving them a ton of value. What I'm doing is starting right from the start of setting up expectations. And I'm doing something, if they are in interviewing more than one agent, I can guarantee you they are not getting a pre-listing package. They're just not. It's one extra little step that has huge results. And I don't imagine anyone else is doing in any other office.
I do it probably about a third of the time.
Yeah. And I don't mean anyone else here, which not many here are doing it, but I mean in other offices, it is not getting done. One of the things is a confirmation. I'm looking forward to seeing you next Tuesday because don't forget me. Don't make an appointment with me and then, blow me off. Then it asks them for some things. Their average utility bills, if they're on a heat budget, their lender's information. Wouldn't it be great if if all this stuff was waiting for us when we got there? That's just a savings for you. Your room measurements. Measure your rooms for me. I walk in, you hand me the room measurements. Done. And they don't find that offensive. They actually have fun. Ooh, honey, get the measuring tape. Listen, they're fine with that. And then again, recent improvements. List the improvements you've made in the year that you made them. What do you want in your realtor? Now, that's the other landmine I don't want to step in. If you've had a realtor before, I want to know what you loved about him and what you hated about them. Because if what you loved about them is everything I don't like and don't do, we are not a match. If what you hated about them is everything I do, perfect, you're gonna love me because I always get back with you. It's very helpful to know. So that is actually not a question on here. I must have just added it manually myself, but I would always say, have you ever worked with an agent before? Great. How was that for you? Well, where is it?
What do you want in your realtor?
It's on that, but by then I've already interviewed them. I actually want to do that at the interview point. Have you ever worked with an agent before? Well, yeah, when we bought the house 15 years ago. How did that go? We loved her. It was your mother, but she's not doing it anymore. You're right. You did love her and you're going to love me too. Great. We're good to go. Right. It might just be that agent isn't in the business anymore, or it was in Utah and, we're here now or whatever. But if it's like, it was not a great experience. Okay. Tell me more about that. Well, they never showed the house themselves. They never had an open house. I am not going to work for you. But I will tell you, that was amazing to me, the number of people that complained that the agent never showed the house. I make sure during the listing conversation, one of the things we talk about is, I want you to know, I probably am not going to show your house. And they'll look at me and I'll say, there are 200 agents in this area. First of all, the buyer knows I'm working for you. And most likely a buyer's going to want their own agent working for them. Second of all, just the odds of with 200 agents in this area, the odds of me also having the buyer are pretty slim. It's not my job to show your house, although I will, believe you me, I'd love nothing more. If I get a call from the sign and I would love to. The odds just aren't for it. My job is to make sure that every single buyer out there looking knows about your house. That's my job. So I had enough people say one of the things they didn't like was that their realtor never showed the house, that I realized this is something we need to discuss up front. People don't realize your listing agent, for the most part, does not show the house. Buyer agents do. Okay. Pre-listing packet, sorry. Information, I always sent them this, getting your home ready. I used to wait and present this at the listing conversation. I started sending it ahead of time. Why not? Isn't that funny? It doesn't want to show up in the screen. Why not send it ahead of time? First of all, then it's not me presenting the information. It's someone else. It's this document. Second of all, they got a head start. We know we need to buy a white shower curtain for the bath. Well, this one doesn't talk about white shower. We know we need to clean out the basement. It's very cluttered. They're locked and loaded for the conversation that we're going to have. The other thing I used to send, and unfortunately, you know how sometimes you save something and then you share it and then you save it and then you share it. Somehow it's not where it's supposed to be in my computer and I'll have to find it. Remax did this whole fit to sell series for sellers. There's a whole set of YouTube videos about staging your home and having it fit to sell. That is the other thing. I think it's on here now. I added it well, I do talk about stage right staging. I think I added it on my letter. I'll be there on Tuesday, whatever. And in the meantime, you know, watch these videos. But there's a booklet, a fit to sell booklet. Did I share it with you, Olivia?
Talk to us about this before.
If anyone has it, can you send it back to me? Because somehow I deleted it in sharing it, and I'm sure I could go to the Remax website and find it again. But it's very in depth. It's 5 or 6 pages, and it goes room by room. Ask yourself this: what do you see here? And again, it's kind of walking the seller through on a staging consultation before you ever even get there. Now, some people suggest send them a very small gift, a $5 Starbucks gift card. And the reason for sending a gift is the law of reciprocation. If you give to them, it's going to be very hard for them later to cancel the appointment because they feel obligated because you've already given them a small gift. So that is, I do that now. Sorry, guys, I didn't do it with you, but I do that now with recruiting appointments. If we make an appointment, I send them a small gift card, you know, looking forward to meeting you next week. And because the gurus say the law of reciprocation is in play there. Okay. Any questions, comments about pre-listing packets? All right, looking up comps. Yeah, right. Here's the thing, you can't, when you can look up comps by neighborhood, that is by far the best way to do it. If you're in Shadowwood, you look in Shadowwood only. If you're in Binder Park Hills, you look in Binder Park Hills only. And there's plenty of comps to look at. Neighborhood, if you can, is the best way to go. So the way you do that is you go into Flex, you pull up a quick search, you enter the address, you pick the push pin thing in the bottom right, you create a radius, or you can do a, you know,
boundary line.
Yeah, you look at the neighborhood, and especially in this market where inventory is a little bit low, I don't know that I'd do anything else than just pull the whole neighborhood. I don't know that I'd say bedrooms and baths, and I'd just pull it because you need enough comps. Right? The problem is when you have a farmhouse or a property, or, you know, a house on property or a house not in a neighborhood or whatever, then you have to ask yourself, look at lake property, for instance. If I'd live on this lake, would I possibly consider living on this lake? Yes, I would. So then you're allowed to look at different lakes, different homes on different lakes that more closely relate to this house, especially if it's a dump on a nice lake or a really nice house on a lake where there's not as many nice houses. You are allowed to look outside that neighborhood. Farmland, hunting land. If I'm looking for a house with 20 acres, am I as stuck in this township as that township? No, the acreage is a little bit more important to me than where. So you're allowed to pull a bigger search. So the comps you're going to pull can be relevant to the type of house you're looking for, right? You could base it on neighborhood, you could base it on amenities, land, lake, whatever, or you could base it on use, meaning hunting, farming, that kind of thing. Okay. Anybody having trouble pulling comps and needs, something specific or a time when you really struggled or.
I think I just get nervous during just doing the wrong thing. You know what I mean? Like, just because I haven't had that many. And so just like not really being in practice of it on like how best to do the search so that it doesn't take like all day or like hours, so just trying to, I don't know, just get better about it and feel confident on what I'm pulling and knowing that what I'm pulling is right. We were talking, when I was talking about that the other day, I was just feeling like, do we even really know what we're doing? You know what I mean? It's like we got to know some of these steps, but it's like to then get all the information and really know how to interpret it in a way that makes sense to the people you're presenting it to when we're still trying to figure that out.
Yep.
So
I'm going to tell you 2 tips and 2 stories.
Okay.
Tip number 1 is a new agent. It's not fast. It's going to take hours.
Okay.
And you owe it to that. You are new.
Right.
So you owe it to that seller to take all the time it takes. It will get faster. Tip number 2 is do your analysis and then ask 5 or 6 agents in the office. I never hesitate. Now, in my later years, I would go to Dustin and I would say, 22 acres to Concho, older farmhouse, not in bad shape. What do you think? I would just give the basics. And he'd say, what's the acreage like? Well, it's a little bit hilly, but really pretty flat and pretty plain, not woods or anything. 220. Good. I was at about 235. So we're not too far off, right? If he said 500,
Oh,
thank you. I need to go back to the drawing. Or if he said 120, it's like, I was way off. Tell me what you think, whatever. I'd go to Talia, Mingus Hills, da 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 da. Gut instinct and Talia, throw out a number. Okay. So those are my 2 tips. It is going to take a long time. Ask and ask 4 or 5 people. Jeff is really harsh on houses. Talia's a little generous. Know who's who too. So don't just get the one or the other, get 2 or 3 and you'll come up with an average.
Yeah. So then take all of that and just find the happy middle ground.
Yeah. The 2 stories are, Amy said to me the other day, Amy has been primarily a buyer's agent forever. Loves it, is in her zone, but realizes she needs to and wants to have more listings and just doesn't feel as confident. And I said, Amy, when I don't know for sure what to price a house at, I ask other listing agents, but I ask the buyer's agents because they're showing them. I go to the buyer's agents and say, what would, do you have any buyers looking for this? What's the price range they're looking? I ask buyer's agents because they know. Give yourself more credit. You know more than you think you know. Matter of fact, sometimes you know more than the primary listing agents because they are a little bit out of it with buyers and what buyers will pay. So give yourself more credit as a buyer's agent that you do know because you're showing them. Okay. The other story is Dad was always a bit of an esoteric thinker. So he'd tell you this thing that he wouldn't just say, two chipmunks were walking through the forest. You're like, Dad, get to the point. Dad said, the way to do a CMA is you pull all the comps, you look at the data, you pour over it all, then you push it aside, You go outside and sit on the curb with your head between your hands and you come up with a price. And it took me a while to figure out what he meant was trust your gut. Look at the data and then trust your gut. You do know. And that's kind of the same as the Amy story.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now remember that we are coming up with an opinion before we get there, but we are pretending like we don't have an opinion when we get there. We are pretending as if we're all in this together. We're coming to this as a team, right? So I pulled these comps and I'm just kind of looking at this and I see this and I see this and I'm thinking, to me that seems comparable. Yeah, no, I agree. Well, no. Oh, yeah, good point. And I mean, we're literally just like, what do you think? Well, what do you think? I agree. I agreed 2 hours ago, but right. Or I see what you're saying, but I mean, I am going to argue with them, but I'm going to do it as if we're getting there together, because when it's their opinion, they're much more likely to accept it than when it's not their opinion and it's in contrast to what your opinion is. Okay.
Now, how many is too many comps or too few comps?
To me, I always wanted to be in the range with actives and pendings and solds in the range of 20. I wanted to total.
So I'm going to show
So
my
it might
client
be
20.
12 solds, 3 pendings, and 5 actives. In today's world, it's what, 1 or 2 actives? So I think I would cut that number down to maybe 12 now, because if you've only got 2 actives and 1 pending and 3 and now 17, 17 seems a little heavy to me. I think 10 to 12 solds and whatever you can get in actives and pendings. But then I'm going to make sure that my solds are selected. I'm gonna make sure they're all the solds that are as close to, and that one sold they told me about, the Brown's house or whoever. Right.
Okay.
There is such thing as too many, for sure.
Oh, I do 9.
9 solds.
Yeah, nothing else.
There you go.
I do school district, general CMA statistical, neighborhood statistical CMA with a list, and then 9 solds with the comparable.
So let's go back that statistical, right? Some people are number people, some people aren't. Casey is, I am. When I started presenting the numbers, what I would say is I want to start with some averages. I understand your home is not average, but if we start by looking at averages, we get a general idea. Then we can hone in on your home. So on average, homes in your neighborhood are listed at this. On average, homes have sold or appended when they're listed here. And on average, they've sold here. Now, what I've done is start right off by setting at least a general expectation. Right? On average, they've been on the market this many days. And on average, they have this many square feet. You have blah. I'm not really pushing them in any direction, but by doing that, I'm already kind of pushing them in a general direction, right? And I said days on market, and then I do the inventory. So, and there are, now this is funny because I'm telling them what is that called? That inventory thing.
Market saturation.
I'm telling them a market saturation based on chosen comps, but it's still, and the good news is here are 10 very close comparables to you and only 1 active, which means 10 of these have sold in the last year, almost 1 a month, and there's only 1 available. So our competition is very low, which is a good thing. Now, there was a time there were 3 solds and 10 actives, and that was in my career. And then I'd have to say, if 3 sell in a year and there's 10 on the market, only the best 3 of these are going to sell in the next 12 months. We've got to be one of the best 3. That's just a reality. Okay. Evaluating comps, looking at averages, trusting your gut. I did not know that I was following the agenda. Asking others and verifying your hunch. There we go. No, I did not even realize. Okay. presenting comps. My gosh, I've just gone through my whole agenda.
Can I add one thing? On
Yes.
the asking people and stuff. I think it's little different because you guys like got here during COVID and there's
Yes.
less people in the office and everything. But it is like super common for agents to ask each other. And you guys haven't been around during agent open houses, but literally like we'd buy food for other agents, tell them to come to the house and be like, I don't know what the fuck to price this house at.
Yeah. You're gonna help me. Now, what agents are still doing, even with COVID, is are asking a select few. So, hey, will you two, and I've got Jeff coming and I've got Casey, would you come with me to a house? I just need you to look at it and tell me what you think. I'm having a hard time comping it. And they'll do that. Okay, thank you. Good
So you
point.
do that only when you're hesitating on the price, not.
I mean, believe it or not, there are houses that are slam dunks. And as an example, there are houses in the numbered streets in Lakeview that were all built the same year by the same builder with the same floor plan. They are easy to price. You don't need help. They are easy. The only difference is condition, and condition isn't that much of a price difference. They are easy to price. So yeah, you do it when you've pulled the comps and you're like, or if you and the seller are miles apart. If you're miles apart, one of the things you'll say to the seller is, let me do this. And you don't say other agents, you say buyer agents. So let me do this. Let me invite several agents in my office who are currently working with buyers in this price range. Let me have them come through and give their opinion. And then you ask them to write the opinion down and you tell them, I'm going to show these to the seller. So please, don't be an asshole, but be truthful, be truthful. And then you say, here's what those buyer agents said. And don't make the buyer agent write their name because the seller could end up hating them. Weaver can't stand her.
Don't put that out there.
You can hate me. You can hate me. Don't hate my agents. Okay, thank you. Lead them to me. Know your walk away price. This means know at what price. This is not my listing, and be willing to walk away from that. Be willing to say, okay, this is just stupid. Now, that's very hard in this market because we don't, every time I think I know what's stupid, I find out it's
Yeah.
not.
Likewise.
But we are starting to overprice houses. We all know it. We all know that the day of the sky is the limit is
Coming down.
coming down and almost over. Sky's the limit. It's still high, but we can't just be like, okay, 200,000, go for it. We can't do that anymore. So the sooner we start to realize that, I know the pressure's hard and the sellers, they're still thinking, but we've got to be prepared to start having those conversations. And you know what they say, if you want to convince somebody of something, tell them a story. If you don't have one of your own, tell them someone else's. So on the one hand, I could tell Olivia's story that she had a listing that the first agent convinced her, was adamant that she was grossly overpriced, and yet she has an offer. So there's a story of how prices are still inflated. And oh, good.
Yeah.
You've got a story of
Yeah. There's
I was realistic with the seller. They wanted to go higher. I allowed it because prices are so crazy and we're still on the market. So, and if you don't have your own story, tell someone else's. So condition too, guys, the whole.
How do we factor that in? Like, because you said, condition might not change the price, how do we know,
Well,
like, how does that?
please forgive me for being
No,
candid.
go for it.
Condition's the issue at his place.
It absolutely is. It's the
It is
only
the
issue with
condition,
mine.
but it's actually not overpriced if they would get rid of the gerbils.
No.
And the
If-
cats and the.
My home would be absolutely perfect
Underpriced,
if they
actually.
would clean it to the to the point that it needs to be cleaned.
I mean, that's kind of my situation that I'm in right now.
Yeah,
with
but
mine,
You're
I-
getting low offers, which your seller will take. He's not, and they won't.
I have
So it's a different situation.
I have received probably 20 feedbacks, and most of those are your price is just right. What is our issue? The condition of the home is a 2.
Then my price isn't just right. I
Right.
argue, right?
Right.
Or
Right. Like they,
clean out.
yeah, the
Yeah.
acreage is good.
If you're
The house is
so
good.
messy that people can't overlook it,
Right.
it's
Right.
time. But anyway, these are the stories you use. You hear us talking like this and you say, okay, he's willing to take a lower price.
Mhm.
They're not. That's the trouble. You
Mhm.
don't have that trouble. You don't need to tell that story.
Mhm.
If you might have needed to say, listen, if we're not going to do more here, we're going to have to be willing to look at lower offers. He is
Right.
willing.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you're okay. You're still in good shape.
Right. Right.
So I just had a listing a couple of days ago, and I showed her the comps and everything, and we came with the price, and we I think it's a fair price, but then I go home and I start thinking like yeah, like am I doing my job right? Because could
I'm
it have been a
so
higher price?
Glad you said that.
Mhm.
So glad you said that.
Mhm.
First of all, the great news is if you underprice it, you'll get multiple offers and it will sell for what it's supposed to sell for. You're good.
Mhm.
You don't purposely do that unless that is a strategy you could use purposely. But that's not what you needed in this situation. You did your best. If you do get multiple offers and it sells quite a bit higher, then take it as a lesson. We underpriced it a little bit. But do you feel comfortable that you and the seller arrived at the price mutually and everybody's good with it?
Mhm.
Then you've done your best. If it should have been more, you both were wrong. It is what it is. They're still going to get more. If it's overpriced, this goes back to setting up expectations. The problem is we're always a little bit chasing the market.
Mhm.
We were underpricing homes when the value was going because you don't know that tomorrow it's going to be this much higher. You're basing it on the last 6 months. We are always chasing the market. So when the market starts to drop, we're going to be chasing it. The minute you realize you're chasing it, you start working on underpricing homes because they won't be underpriced because we're chasing the market. But you have that conversation up front. Listen, I have to tell you something. Prices are dropping. I'm finding that we're looking at past comps and we're constantly chasing the market because prices are dropping. So we're basing our data correctly, but prices are dropping and now we're incorrect. I need to know that if I come back to you in 6 weeks and say, we're chasing the market, we missed it, that we're going to be able to do a significant price reduction to catch back up with the market. We need to talk about that now. Look how much easier that's going to be in 6 weeks than if you didn't have that conversation and now you're saying, guys, we're chasing the market. We don't just need to drop. We need to drop to catch up and get in front of it. I talked about that 6 weeks ago and you knew. Done. Or I didn't talk about it and now you think you money grubbing realtor just told me what I wanted to hear, thinking you'll just get me later. Setting up those expectations is so important. What if we underpriced it? Well, do either of us feel we underpriced it? No, I feel like it's right. Me too. If the good news is if we underpriced it, we're going to get a feeding frenzy and we'll find out. And the way we'll find out is you'll get more. And won't that be great? Let's also talk about what if we overpriced it? The way we'll know very quickly is either no showings, which means it's way overpriced, or a ton of showings and no offers, which means it's overpriced. And if that happens, that's proof. We don't need any further proof. We don't need a sign. That's proof. And we've got to be willing to make that adjustment quickly. Now I've already told them. And especially back in a real market, we talked about their walkaway price. Guys, I'm showing you 120, even though I feel like we could list as much as 135 because you and I both saw it. The bottom of this range is 120. And if you can't take 120, maybe it's not time to list, because that is realistically the bottom of this range. We both see it. If you can take 120 and we get you 135, great. If you can take 120 and we get you 128, great. But if you can't take 120 and that's a realistic bottom of the range, maybe it's not time. Okay. Know your walkaway price, know theirs. Now, what is the least they'll take? What do you do if they want to think about it? Well, first of all, I was hard sold as a 20-year-old and bought something I did not need because I was hard sold. My husband and I were like, oh, if you buy it today, and then no, buy it today, buy it today, buy. And we did. Immediately regretted it and made a pact. We will never, ever buy something on the spot again. Why would I make that pact for myself and push someone else to do that? So, and I tell people that story. Don't worry, I'm not here to push you to list your home because my husband and I were hard sold and we swore we never would. If you need to think about it, I respect that. I honor that. Let me ask you a question. Is there information you're still looking for? Is there something else? And is there something more I could have told you or differently I could have told you that would make you not need to think about it? Is there something? Because of course, what I'm looking for is, do they want to talk to someone else and see if they can get more? Are they meeting with another agent? Did another agent tell them more? And I want to know that, because then we're going to talk about that. Well, we met with another agent and they said 150. Great. Did they show you comps? Yeah, they did. Were they the same comps I showed you? Yeah, they were. So I'm a little confused because we looked through these comps together and we mutually came to 135. Did they walk you through it or did they just show you the comps and say 150? Well, they just, okay, why would someone do that? Ask yourself, why would someone do that? I know why they do it. I'm curious if you know why they do it. Because they know it's 135 and they're buying you at 150. And at some point they'll reevaluate the comps with you and get you to sell at 135. And I mean, I can't promise you that's what they're doing, but that's sure what it looks like to me. So that's fine. You should think about it. But ask yourself about the motivation behind that. If they didn't give the same comps, would you mind if we looked at those comps? Let's look. Maybe I pulled the wrong comps. Let's look together. Let's do what we did with my comps. Let's seed through them and see what we might be missing. Oh, these comps are in Harbor Creek. That's interesting. We have a whole slew of comps in your neighborhood. Why are these from outside? That doesn't, and I'm not going to say, gee, that just doesn't make sense to me. Why would they do that? Okay. Open time for questions. Confidence is a beautiful thing. It really is. And there's really only one way to get confidence, which is with practice. But I would argue that you have tons of practice as a showing agent, and you need to trust that a little bit. Every time you start to feel that pressure, that I'm an imposter, pressure, take a deep breath and think, what if this was Kim? What would I say to her? Would this pressure be getting me, or would I be like, girl, you see what I see? Why are we arguing about this? It really helps to ask yourself that. What if it was so-and-so? Would I be feeling this pressure? What if it's my husband? Poor man. If it was my husband, even shut up. I'm the expert. You don't get an opinion. But I'll say to people, okay, I'm taking a step back and I'm thinking, what if you were my husband? What if we were doing this as husband and wife? I'm telling you what I would have told my husband. This isn't me. This isn't sales right now. This is we're a team. We're a couple. And so I want you to know I'm telling you exactly what I would tell the love of my life. So
And I think there are times when I sort of have those feelings where it's like, is it just me thinking of myself as the consumer who tries to be very frugal and like whatever, it's like, well, I wouldn't, you know what I mean? And so then I'm like, am I putting my own, because it's
My
like-
own fiscal
Yes.
policy? And
Right.
that is a very good question,
Mhm.
because
Which I'm trying
I
not to, but I'm like,
I
mm,
buy problems away. I don't mind it. You know,
mhm.
Freddie said today, if I went 3 weeks without weed whacking, you'd start complaining. And I said, yeah, I would. But I'd either say, do you want me to help you? Or I'd pay someone to do it.
Right.
I wouldn't be mad at you because you're not doing it. You're working as much as I am. I'd pay someone to do it. I will pay away my problems. I'm happy to do that. For me, my time is worth more time. If you came up with a repair, I'd be like, yep, get it done. 2,000 bucks, because to me, so I'll say that to a seller. Okay, I can give you all kinds of advice, but sometimes it's personality, and you need to know my personality is I don't like to dink around with stuff. If I get an offer that's close enough, we're selling. I'm not going to come back and say, can I get a little bit more? My husband, however, is the polar opposite. And I'm telling this seller, he will be like, we'll see if we can get 300 more. Where I'll be like, no, it's not worth 10 minutes of my time. It's worth an hour of his time. So that's a personality thing. And I'm going to tell you how I feel about it, but that's where you rule. If you want me to ask for 300 more, I'll ask for 300 more. I'm going to tell you what the risks are. But yes, Olivia, that's a valid concern, but that comes down to negotiating. Pricing is pricing.